Hello and welcome. Our 3D technology enables us to show you images that you can almost touch or feel. Let's see how it's done. In real life, we perceive depth thanks to one small but important gap. The space between our right eye and our left. Because of their different locations, each eye sees a different image. That's why 3D movies are filmed with double-lens cameras. Each lens replaces one eye. To see the final result in 3D, each eye must be able to see only one image. And that's where the special 3D glasses come in. Two images are projected simultaneously on the screen in front of you. If you take off your glasses for a moment, you'll see them projected one on top of the other, creating a blurry image. Put your glasses back on. Let's separate the two images. Each image is projected through a different filter. Each eye looks at the screen through a different filter too. That's how the image from the right-hand projector only reaches the right eye, and the image from the left-hand projector reaches only the left eye. When each eye sees a slightly different image, the brain creates a three-dimensional picture. As you can see, we can influence our gullible brain with simple tricks. There are other ways to fool a brain. That's exactly what we'll see today. We'll take a three-dimensional trip inside our body. We'll find out what a nerve impulse is and how information travels from cell to cell until it reaches our brain. What's dopamine and why does it make us feel so good? What are chemical emotions and what makes them different from real emotions? And how do the drugs marijuana, ecstasy, and even glue affect our brains through chemistry and electricity? Ready to hit the road? Okay, all I need to get started is a human body so we can examine it. Any volunteers? How about you? No? Maybe you down there? How about you two? Okay, actually I can manage without volunteers. Our bodies are made up of trillions of cells, thousands of blood vessels, capillaries, tissues, and nerve cells. Nerve cells are also called neurons. But what about emotions? Where are the emotions hiding in this complex and sophisticated body of ours? As you probably all know, people used to think we feel with our hearts. But today we know that we actually feel with our brain. All of our thoughts, our emotions, our decisions, all of them begin and end in the brain. We get upset. We feel happy. We think. And sometimes people just fall in love. I know it doesn't sound all that romantic, but it's all just chemistry and electricity. Processes that occur in the central nervous system in the brain. So how does all of this happen? Say hello to my friend here, who's going to enjoy and suffer a little for you. Here's a question. How does our brain find out when our leg is being tickled? How does it know we should be laughing? Take a look. The feather tickles the foot. The message, "the foot got tickled," travels to the brain through a series of nerve cells. The brain analyzes this information and sends a new message, "laugh." Each of these messages or transfers of information is called a nerve impulse. The incredible thing is that the nerve cells aren't even connected to each other. So how come the electric impulse isn't cut off? This is where the neurotransmitter steps in. This is the chemical substance that transmits the information from one nerve cell to the next. Inside the nerves, the information is transmitted as an electric impulse. When the impulse reaches the end of the nerve, it triggers the release of the neurotransmitter molecules. They cross the synaptic gap and reach the next nerve. At the edge of this nerve await them specific receptors. As they reach them, they ignite another electric impulse. When the electric impulse reaches the end of the second cell, neurotransmitter molecules will be released, and they will set off another electric impulse. This will happen over and over until the message reaches its destination. That's how information travels from cell to cell, just like I said. Chemistry and electricity. We've now seen this in slow motion, but it actually happens at an enormous speed of about 100 meters per second, which is much faster than this plane, for example. Well, that's pretty much all there is to nerve cell communication. It's the so-called management system of all the functions of our body. But besides transferring information between nerve cells, neurotransmitters have another function. In our brain, there are various kinds of neurotransmitters which are each in charge of different feelings and emotions. When we're happy, for example, or scared, or in love, the nerve cells in our brain release neurotransmitters that are responsible for these emotions. One of them is called dopamine. Dopamine makes us feel very good. Isn't it fun to eat good food, wear nice shoes, smell flowers, or pet a cute puppy, watch a car race, play a soccer game, watch a great movie? And of course, spend time with the people we love.
I feel like we have
Electricity?
chemistry.
So you might ask, if dopamine makes us feel so good, why don't we find a way to release it on purpose? Why shouldn't we feel good all the time? Well, that's a good question, and it's not the first time it's been asked. Over the years, people have found different substances that do exactly that. Drugs. Drugs are substances that create a sense of joy, love, confidence, or freedom. So how do they work? Most drugs take advantage of the body's natural processes. They cause an overflow of dopamine and other neurotransmitters. Great, isn't it? Well, not really. The damage that drugs may cause could be immediate, continuous, and even permanent. Sometimes even from the very first puff or pill. And the feelings of love, happiness, and confidence that they generate, well, they're nothing more than illusions. We'll call them chemical emotions. From now on, we'll monitor these emotions. Right here we have an indicator of our real emotions, and it tends to move pretty calmly. Now, this indicator represents the emotions caused by drugs. It will move around a lot. Marijuana, weed, pot. These are some of the names for drugs made out of a plant called cannabis. No one knows exactly how cannabis affects the brain, and it doesn't affect everyone the same way. But as some of you may know, the feeling it usually creates is called a high. It means it makes people feel dazed, relaxed, and happy. It's fun. But gradually, these feelings make way for a heavy, tired feeling. During the 4 hours after cannabis use, people experience temporary memory loss and a decline in balance and physical fitness. The high usually ends after about 4 to 5 hours, and the user thinks that everything is back to normal and the drug's effect has worn off. It was just a harmless little adventure. So after the high, is everything really back to normal? No. Despite the user's impression, the active ingredient in the cannabis, THC, continues to affect the user's behavior and perception for 2 or 3 days. THC is a fat-soluble substance, and it takes the body a long time to get rid of it. For people who use pot regularly, this process can take up to 30 days. What happens in the brain of a cannabis user? The human body naturally has neurotransmitters called internal cannabinoids. Under normal circumstances, the internal cannabinoids are those which bind with their matching receptors and start a chain reaction that makes the brain release dopamine. THC is very similar to internal cannabinoids. So, when a person uses cannabis, the THC replaces the internal cannabinoids and causes the brain to release dopamine. And voila! Instant happiness. Dopamine to go. But unlike internal cannabinoids, THC also has negative effects. When it binds with the neuron receptors, it disrupts the communication between the neurons. And so, cannabis users damage their ability to comprehend and learn, and also their timing and response time. What else does cannabis do? Sometimes it causes anxiety and panic attacks. These attacks may include a dry feeling in the mouth, paranoid thoughts, an increased heart rate, and even a sense of paralysis. People who are unaware of their susceptibility to panic attacks suddenly feel like they're about to go crazy. And some actually do. Turpentine, whiteout, paint thinner, gasoline, crazy glue, acetone. These materials are usually mistakenly considered to be harmless materials. However, the fumes of these inhalants quickly travel from the lungs to the blood. At first they create a feeling of elation, giddiness, and euphoria, chemical emotions. But after a short while, from minutes to an hour, other feelings arise. Headaches, nausea, fatigue, and apathy. The inhalants are toxins. In recurring use, they accumulate in the kidneys and the liver. The body futilely tries to break them down. That's how users damage their liver and kidneys, their heart, and their brain and nervous system. For example, inhaling Freon, the gas in air conditioners, well, that causes confusion, disorientation, loss of control, and acts of violent behavior. You've probably heard or read about kids and teenagers who fell to their death from high places after inhaling Freon, or of shocking acts of violence that people have committed while under the influence of inhalants, only to claim later that they don't remember a thing. The active ingredient in ecstasy is called MDMA. It stimulates, causes hallucinations. It doesn't affect everyone the same way, but usually taking ecstasy starts out with a good mood, a lot of energy, a sense of relaxation, love for everyone, and a heightened sensitivity of the senses. Do you think that's funny? Yeah, me too. But in many cases, ecstasy has very serious consequences. How does it work? Remember the dopamine that made us feel pleasure? The neurotransmitter serotonin also makes us feel wonderful feelings like love and tranquility. Under normal circumstances, after the serotonin delivers the message, it is broken down in the synaptic gap or returns to the neuron that released it. But ecstasy prevents the serotonin from returning to the neuron that sent it. The serotonin accumulates in the synaptic gap, binds to the receptors again and again, and intensifies the user's emotions. Dopamine to go, with a side of serotonin.
Dopamine and serotonin coming right up.
But after a while, the accumulation of serotonin and dopamine causes unpleasant effects. Nausea, dizziness, obscured thought, and tooth grinding. And if you use ecstasy while dancing, well, dehydration too. Why is that? Sometimes ecstasy suppresses the feeling of thirst, and then the user just doesn't drink enough water and gets dehydrated. Sometimes the opposite happens. The user is constantly thirsty and drinks too much. And drinking too much causes edemas in the brain and the lungs. That can cause a blackout. But the brain isn't the only victim. Overheating may cause contractions and muscle spasms. That's a life-threatening situation. When a person uses ecstasy, their heart rate accelerates, their blood pressure rises, and that may cause very dangerous internal bleeding. By the way, that has happened mainly to young people. Ecstasy may also cause a bad trip, and then instead of feeling like hugging and kissing everyone, the user gets depressed, acts psychotic, and is driven to obsessive behavior, and sometimes ends up in a psychiatric hospital. But the most significant long-term effect of ecstasy is the way it causes the brain to malfunction. Ecstasy may cause neurons to degenerate, so regular ecstasy users gradually lose their ability to feel pleasure. So we've seen that anyone who lets drugs into their body lets them into their brain. Drugs affect memory and one's sex life. Drugs affect motivation and a person's ability to control themselves and many other important things. In short, they affect life and death. What do you think, Does a shortcut to happiness really exist? You decide. Be happy when there's a reason. Dance without taking anything first. Be yourself and have faith. It's your greatest gift. Even if others laugh at you, smile. It's a big world and it's no big deal. Fall in love with the wonderful person you meet. Listen. Sometimes great wisdom lies in silence. Dream. Your victories stem from your dreams. Remember, you can do it even if the task is intimidating, because anything is possible. The world is not your jail cell, and you're not alone. And when you are lonely, be your own best friend. And even if it hasn't happened yet, someday someone will love you exactly the way you are. But above all, take care of yourself, because good things can only happen to you when you're alive.